This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code Spotify. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify, code Spotify.
Welcome to Don't Retire, Graduate, the podcast that asks you what you want to be when you grow up so you can graduate into retirement with a purpose and a passion. I'm your host and valedictorian, Eric Brotman, and after nearly 200 episodes and a year-long hiatus, Don't Retire, Graduate is back for Season 6. We'll be bringing you interviews with amazing guests every other Thursday, and on alternating weeks, we're hosting a new segment called Diary of a Financial Advisor, which we know you'll all enjoy. So please subscribe and check out our all-new episodes every Thursday. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Nicole Hewitt. Nicole practices in the area of estate planning and estate administration, elder law, special needs planning, business planning, and title and real estate transactions with an emphasis on the tax aspects of each area. She represents individuals, business owners, young families, individuals reaching retirement, and the elderly in connection with planning to meet their estate, tax, and medical assistance planning goals. In addition, Nicole works with individuals and families with special needs, including trusts and adult guardianships. Prior to co-founding HWK Law Group, Nicole was a senior tax associate with two Big Five accounting firms, an associate with a large prominent Baltimore law firm, served as both general counsel and executive director to a national mortgage lender and broker, and was a co-owner of an affiliated multi-state title company. She resides in Lutherville with her husband and three children, enjoys frequent trips to Florida, playing tennis, traveling, skiing, and spending time with her family and friends. And I'm delighted she's going to spend some time with us this morning. Nicole, welcome to Don't Retire, Graduate.
Thanks for
Your
having
bio
me.
is phenomenal. Is there anything you don't do? Let's rule out anything. Is there anything you don't do? Let's start with
I try
that.
not to go to court is what I try not to do.
Me too, particularly as a non-attorney. The less time I spend in court, the better off. So our topic today, which I think our audience is really going to like, is the impact on pre and post retirees that is created with either a special needs child or with aging parents. And we're going to get into both of those topics at length. But did I miss anything in your bio? Anything else you'd like to do to introduce yourself and the work you're doing?
Oh no, I think you have it covered. You have it covered.
I covered it. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's break this into quadrants. Let's talk about pre-retirees first, because we spend a great deal of time talking about reaching financial independence, and reaching financial independence is not linear. It's exponential, but it also has its ups and downs. And some of the challenges facing families are not in the present generation. They're the generation before us or the generation behind us. So let's talk about that for pre-retirees when you're trying to save for retirement, but you also have the expenses and some of the challenges created by, say, special needs children. Let's begin there.
Sure. So I think there's two different perspectives. So you have the pre-retirees perspective of themselves and how are they going to retire. And then you also have their perspective if they have aging parents too that are still alive, how are those parents going to be provided for? So a lot of this really is kind of the magic around having some really good conversations with family, with your financial advisor, and just figuring out, life is expensive enough when you don't have, somebody with a special need in your family, let alone when somebody does. And how are you going to provide for yourselves and them as you age? So it's really challenging.
So for many years, we've been giving the airplane safety lecture to clients and saying, in the event of loss of cabin pressure, masks will drop down. Please secure your own mask before securing masks for others. And the idea is retirement's the only thing you can't borrow for. And therefore, you should save for your retirement before worrying about your kids or other family members. The problem with that is special need kids, that situation really does take such a precedent. It almost can't take a back seat to anything else. And, we've certainly represented folks in that situation. And I do think it can be an all-consuming an all-consuming task to not only care for special needs children now, but also potentially after you're gone and your kids may not be in a position to be fully independent and need help beyond your lifetime. So how can you possibly put yourself first when you're in that situation and you have what could be a lifetime of financial need for someone you love the most in life?
Yeah, that is a huge challenge. So I look at it as, let's not swap. If I'm the individual planning for my disabled, say, child, for example, I don't want to put my well-being necessarily ahead of them, because we've got two different kind of financial trains that are going at the same time. So that you can never start too early, number one. When a child is small, I mean, really, these are things that people should be looking at and not waiting until, oh no, I'm reaching retirement age, or, somebody starts realizing their own mortality and wondering what's going to happen to my special needs child. So the planning really should start early. Now, that's in a perfect world, but as we know, that doesn't always happen. So when I'm having conversations with clients, we're really looking at how can we set money aside for that disabled individual if the caretaker, normally the parent, is no longer around to help and take care of them. And oftentimes, a big piece of the planning involves life insurance because, people don't have normally just millions and millions of non-retirement money just sitting in the bank to self-fund these things. So a lot of times we are looking at how can we convert some money into an insurance policy in a trust so that that disabled individual can be taken care of in the in the inevitable event of death, because we're all going to die at some point. We don't know who's going to go first. So how do we have the liquidity to do this? So that's a lot of times what we're looking at.
So that was uplifting. Thank you for that. It's true, though. It's true. I mean, we're all mortal. So you mentioned the T word, trust, which is really, really important, because there are a lot of different ways that special needs children, and in fact, special needs adults, can get various types of assistance from government programs and so forth, where having money in their own names can actually invalidate their ability to get some other aid. We've seen situations where an aunt or uncle or grandparent is trying to be benevolent and leaves money to a special needs child, and it actually can mess the planning up pretty solidly. So you actually have to make sure, not only as parents, that you're leaving assets in trust in an appropriate way to not sacrifice potential government benefits, but that your other family members don't accidentally leave money to your son or daughter, because it could actually cost them more than it provides for them. How do you navigate those nine-headed hydras of family conversations to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yes, a lot of people think, oh gosh, we're going to really do good and leave, this disabled individual in my estate plan. But it's really important to have conversations. I think with anything that we're talking about here today, conversations are huge. This is not the time for privacy. This is the time to talk to the aunt or the uncle, to talk to the parent, talk about what the ultimate plan is going to be, because you're right. We do not want cash going outright to a disabled individual, because there are these wonderful government programs, everything from Social Security disability to Medicaid programs. And if an individual has more than $2,500 in their name, they lose access to these programs that are out there. So it's important that any sort of benevolent gifts that are given from family members are put into a special needs trust. And there's all different types of special needs trust vehicles. It's not a one size fits all. They can be freestanding trusts that are created today. They can be trusts that come into existence in the future. There are things called pooled trusts that nonprofit entities run these trusts specifically for the management of disabled individuals. So a lot of this is just the conversations, the education, and knowing if there is somebody who's going to leave money out there to a disabled individual, and then saying, okay, we need to figure out the best way to get it to them.
So one of the questions we ask clients or prospective clients when they come to meet with us for the first time, we go through a family tree. We try to determine the cast of characters in our clients' lives because that does play a role. But we also ask, is there anyone who predictably might leave you money or cost you money? And people usually laugh a little at that question. And most of them say, no one's leaving me money. But there might be some folks who cost me money. And a lot of times that's their parents or, who either haven't been able to save for themselves or what have you. Having a conversation with the whole family is super important. And you said this is not a time for privacy, but I'm not sure that it's necessary to quantify your desired benevolence as much as to qualify it. In other words, if your aunt and uncle or your siblings or somebody says, we want to leave money to your daughter who has some special needs, they don't have to specify whether they're leaving $5,000 or $5 million necessarily, but it does mean that they need to leave it to the trust that's being set up for her benefit. So the privacy, a lot of times people are very embarrassed about their net worth or about what they're leaving behind. And the word wealthy is a loaded term because wealthy is so relative. Like, what is wealthy? So I think the privacy may still extend to some of the quantifiable things. If there's discomfort in telling your loved ones what you're worth or what you're leaving behind or any of that, whether you feel it's too big or too small, any of the baggage around it, that's not really necessary to avoid this third rail, correct? We don't have to know how much money it is. We just have to know if it's coming, that it gets to your son or daughter in the right way, correct?
Correct. I mean, look, in a perfect world, yes, you might want to know how much is coming because that's going to impact the level of your own planning and what you need to do. But yes, if there is privacy in the fact of how much, that's fine. We just need to make sure that whatever that amount is put into the right vehicle to make sure that we are doing the best to protect that disabled individual. And that's what's most important.
So a trust gets created potentially for special needs kids. We want to make sure that the beneficiary doesn't leave money to that child directly and that it goes to the trust. There's some really tricky things in beneficiary designations, though, that trip people up. Beneficiary designations that are, for example, per stirpes, where they go by route where they could accidentally leave money to the next of kin, including the special needs child. So it's not enough just, I think, to see your lawyer and to have the special needs trust set up and either funded or prepared to be funded. It's also really important to go through a full litany and review of the beneficiary designations that you have. And by the way, that the grandparents or aunt and uncle have if they're contemplating that. Have you seen situations where and I'm going to put it in quotes because there's no such thing as perfect, but where the perfect, maybe your legal plans are perfect, Nicole, I grant you that, but where the perfect legal plan gets subverted by a complete accident in a beneficiary designation. Have you seen those kinds of scenarios?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just dealing with one right now where it was a situation where and this is more with an elderly individual, but still the same disability kind of principles apply, but where a daughter passed away prematurely before the parent, and the daughter did not have any of her own children. And according to Maryland law, that all the assets of that child now passes to disabled mom who's in a nursing home. So there's a lot of planning where people aren't thinking about, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know who's going to die first, who's going to die second. So we have to think about it's a little bit morbid. We have to think about worst case scenario down the line. So it's thinking if person A does not survive, now what? And even if person B doesn't survive, now what? I always talk to my clients, I am planning for doomsday. Hopefully that never comes, but we are planning for if, the whole lineage is gone, what's the next step?
Well, for some reason, and I shouldn't be laughing at the doomsday scenario, but it conjures up a memory about George Carlin talking about if there's an explosion at Thanksgiving. And so it's just, if the whole family is wiped out, then what happens? But I hear you. People travel together. They take cruises together. They get on airplanes together, whatever. And without getting morbid, that certainly happens. Let's shift gears a little bit now. We've talked about special needs kids. And of course, we could talk about ABLE accounts and some of the techniques. But for today, without getting into the weeds, it's really just a call to action to talk with an attorney who is a special needs attorney, and to talk to your financial advisor and to talk to your family. So let's shift gears and talk about aging parents. I don't know about you, but I'm faced with this at this very moment. So it hits very home to me. When you have parents who are getting older, who either are in a position where they need some help managing their affairs, or potentially they need some help financially, what does that do to pre-retirees and even post-retirees who are 70 and have living parents?
Yeah, that creates a big challenge. I mean, I think I was just talking with somebody this morning about this big misconception of people think, oh, I can age in place. There's government, money to help me with this. My kids will take care of me. There's this mentality that things will just work out, and things just don't happen. There needs to be some planning when it comes to aging. I do a workshop where I ask people to write down all of their wishes of what they would like their aging process to look like. Create the most beautiful, perfect wish list. And then at the end, when everybody's feeling really good, I say, okay, do we know how we're going to pay for this? And it's amazing how then people kind of scratch their head and they're like, I don't know at this point. And that's where conversations with financial advisors need to happen. This is where conversations with your children need to happen. Children are, as we pointed out, they're just trying to save for their own retirement. They may be raising children. There's a lot going on in their life. And then when they're faced with a situation where they have a parent who has not put a lot of thought into the next phase of their life, it can create stress all around for everyone. So everything down to, can I stay in my home, to do I have money to bring in in-home care? Do I need to downsize right now? There are lots of considerations.
So one of the considerations is around long-term care and the expenses of aging. I think there's a misconception that Medicare covers long-term care, which to a very tiny extent it does, but really it doesn't. And I can tell you that the conversation I had with my parents was very, very simple, Nicole, and I'm gonna share some inside baseball. I said, none of you don't have to leave me a penny, but please don't have me paying your bills at any point in time. And specifically, I need you to have long-term care insurance if you can qualify for it. If you're not willing to buy it, I'm going to buy it for you with your permission.
Oh, that's nice.
And by the way, if I'm buying it for you, I'm going to mention it every Thanksgiving, and you don't want that. So they all did it because they didn't want that coming up at every family event. And I say that tongue in cheek, but the reality is, if my parents spend every last nickel they have and live with dignity and are okay to their very last breath, we win. It's not about an inheritance. It's about not having me pay for a nursing home and college at the same time, because ultimately that's really tough. And, you mentioned, oh, my kids will take care of me. There's a lot around that. And it's one thing to show up at mom or dad's house and help them pay some bills and bring them some groceries. And it's a whole nother thing to put them in the shower or help them go to the bathroom. And, people, I think, aren't thinking about that. The things that we can do for our loved ones to help out, going and helping take care of the yard or do some things around the house, that's one thing. But when you really start talking about the need for intermediate or skilled care, nursing care, medical, handling prescriptions, all those kinds of things, unless you're a nurse or of some type, you don't have the background for that. And I don't know about you, but I never want my daughter having to shower me. It was bad. She didn't like when I showered her when she was 4. She said I did it wrong or mom did it right, but she definitely doesn't want to do that for me. So what do we tell folks who really are insistent that their kids are going to take care of them? Do you talk to the kids sometimes and say, is that really the plan?
I encourage, when I'm meeting with people, to come together as a family and let's have conversations. So if I'm doing a planning for a parent, I encourage them, let's bring their children in and let's have a conversation. And you tell them what you want at that moment. If you want to age in your house, let's talk about it, because the kids will then say at that point, okay, that's great, but how are we going to pay for it? Let's set up a plan for how it can be done. And again, if the reality is that this is not going to work, then we need to face it head on now and not wait until there's some sort of family crisis, because people have jobs, they have lives. And the most stressful thing I see happen is where kids now are trying to work their full-time job. They're trying to put their kids through college. And now all of a sudden there's this new job on their plate of having to provide for the care of a parent. And that, it's devastating. It ruins relationships. It decimates people's financial situation. And I tell people as they age, what legacy do you want to leave for your family? Do you want happy memories of your kids thinking about those Thanksgiving dinners and those happy times? Or do you want the memories at the end being, stress and creating, health issues for yourself, and just this bitterness at the end? Even if you don't have a lot of money, there's things that you can do to eliminate that type of stress for you and your family.
So anytime I get to interview a real expert, I always get a little bit of free advice, which I'm very excited about today, some free advice. What do you do when one of your parents really shouldn't operate a motor vehicle anymore? I know you've been through these. I know you've been through these conversations. What do you do when that is the last lifeline of independence, and yet it's a time bomb too?
This is really tough. I wish I had the secret solution for this. We all call this in the office, when parents are in the gray, because they haven't lost competency to the point where you take everything away from them, but you're still trying to keep some dignity. It's tough. You have to reverse roles at this point. The best advice I give clients are, you are now the parent and they are the child. Imagine if your child was getting tickets all the time and being a horrible driver. What would you do with your child? You have to do it the same way with a parent, and your parent's not going to be happy with you. They're not. Nobody's happy in this situation. But for the safety of everyone, you have to make some tough decisions. And the hardest ones are when children aren't willing to make those decisions. I get lots of calls where they are, kind of crying to me. And I'm like, if you're not willing to make the hard decision, there's not much more I can do for you. It's kind of harsh, but it's really tough. It's really tough.
All right. Well, that's not the answer I was hoping for. I was hoping you had some magical thing, like you would show up and be like the key fairy and take the keys off the dresser or something, and that it would just take care of itself in some way. So if there was a call to action today, if there was one thing that people dealing with either their parents getting older, which for those of us blessed to still have living parents, it's a blessing, but it's also a responsibility, or where there are some special needs children who are going to need some care beyond, what is the first, or maybe the first step or two that people should take immediately after spending some time with us today?
I think it's to sit back, especially with the holidays coming up, sit back and observe your parents, as they age, and really look and see, okay, do they need my help right now? Don't wait until they're so far gone to start that help process. Start with the conversations, just talk. That's the biggest thing. I tell my clients when they're dealing with their parents to sit back and say, hey, mom or dad, I just got doing all of my planning. We had some really great conversations. Where are you in the process? Turn it around so it's kind of like you're not saying to them, pointing the finger at them to make a point of you haven't planned. Talk about your own planning and then turn that into kind of a positive conversation with them. And again, with special needs family members, it's also kind of taking that look back and not looking at it from a scared perspective, looking at it from how can I give myself some peace of mind and really do well and do good things to make sure that my loved one is really taken care of. Again, having the conversations with family members when you have somebody with special needs. If I'm gone, who can I call on for support? How can I set up the right support to make those other people successful in helping my disabled child, for example? So it's really conversations and thoughtful planning. And then at that point, once you're kind of in the right headspace, calling the right professional to make sure that things are done correctly, because that's the biggest thing I see sometimes is people wanting to, everybody wants to save a dollar, and that's great. But when it comes to these things, this is not the time to, kind of do the cheap option. It's time to do it right and do it well, because doing it wrong can be just as bad as not doing anything at all.
So great call to action. I'm going to throw a curveball at you because you have an elder care or an elder law background as well. Mm-hmm. I've been reading more and more about the ways in which states are trying to go after grown kids for Medicaid spending that happened on behalf of their parents, familial laws and such. Yep. For many years, the idea was to bankrupt grandma so that she could qualify for Medicaid. And that's, mm-hmm. I guess it still happens occasionally, but I mm-hmm. think it's a lot harder to do than it used to be. Are we seeing states who are paying the lion's share of Medicaid for elderly people? Are we seeing them successfully go after the next of kin for mm-hmm. reimbursement of some of those expenses?
So they're not going after per se people for that type of planning, but in most states there's a look back for gifting. So states vary generally from 3 to 5 years. Maryland in particular is a 5-year look back. So if we take and mom or dad wants to gift away their entire savings that might be $500,000, say. They gift it to the child. As long as they stay out of the nursing home and healthy for 5 years, then we've protected that full $500,000 for the kids, or for the kids to use towards any sort of assistance for mom and dad in the future. Now, if in that 5-year period, mom or dad gets ill and needs a nursing home stay, then yes, kids either need to give that money back, or mom or dad's not going to qualify and they're going to look to somebody to pay that money, or say, here, you got to take mom or dad in. They're yours.
So if you're still looking to bankrupt grandma, you should do it when she's a little younger. Is that that's the moral of the story?
That's the moral of the story. And look, there's some moral
absolutely compass. Terrible.
There's some moral compass to this planning. I know we do this type of elder planning. And if somebody comes to me and they've got a couple $1 million, I can't in my, in good conscience say, okay, we're going to bankrupt mom and dad so that they can get on a state program. No. But if somebody comes and they've got a few $100,000 or all they have is their house, then we might want to do that type of planning, because for Medicaid planning purposes, you have to get somebody down to their last $2,500 before they qualify. And the Medicaid program is great, but they don't cover anything. Like, the best example I can give is this. They don't cover, say, good dental care. So if mom and dad are in a nursing home on Medicaid and they're having dental issues, Medicaid's solution is just pull all the teeth. They don't go in and help with, They give you like one set of bridges like every, say, 5 years, and people in nursing home lose those all the time. So, it's nice to have a little bit of money set aside for, say, dental work. That's just one example. So
I'm picturing each of my parents. I'm picturing each of my parents with no teeth right now. I mean, just the mental image I've conjured up I appreciate that very, very much. We're almost out of time, and there's no way you're getting through an episode of Don't Retire, Graduate without being on the hot seat. And I need to ask you what your personal plan is and what you want to be when you grow up.
Ooh. So this is kind of a funny one, but easy. I believe in another life, I was maybe a contractor. I love projects. I love to build things. I'd go back to like community college and get some licenses in learning how to do woodworking and be a contractor and build things. I'm a builder.
That's fantastic. And yes. My wife wants to redo the powder room. So we'll have you can have your first project right away. If you would like to do that, we can make that happen. Where can folks learn more about you and get in touch with you if they have questions about either special needs planning for a young one, or planning for their aging parents, or just estate planning in general?
Sure. So my number is 410-567-5504. Our website is hwklawgroup.com. And you can reach out, and we would be happy to have these conversations or start these conversations.
Terrific. Well, we will put those notes in our show notes so that people know how to get in touch with you. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that you and I are going to be collaborating on a webinar in March. This is March of 2025. Now we're talking about March 25th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We're collaborating on a webinar about the Tax Cuts and Job Act of 2017 and its potential sunset. And in wake of the election, there's now some controversy around whether it will sunset in full or in part or not at all. And so between now and March 25th, we'll be doing lots of homework so that we can provide all of our viewers with as much information as possible, knowing what could be coming December 31st of 2025. So that's Tuesday, March 25th at 10 a.m. Eastern. Nicole, thank you for being on the show. This was fantastic. I knew it would be, and you've given us a lot of great nuggets that other than how to get the keys from Dad, I think I got everything I could possibly want out of you. So I appreciate it very, very much.
You're welcome. And if you find that secret solution, please let me know.
I will. I'd like to thank everyone for listening and watching today. If you enjoy our show, please subscribe, leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform, share it with your friends and family so they can join you on your journey to financial freedom. If you'd like to send us a topic or idea you'd like to discuss in a future episode of Don't Retire, Graduate, please post it on our Facebook page or tweet us at Brotman Planning. We'll be back next week with another entry in our Diary of a Financial Advisor, and in 2 weeks with another engaging guest. For now, this is Eric Brotman reminding you, don't retire, graduate.
Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC. Kestra IS. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC. Kestra AS. An affiliate of Kestra IS. Kestra IS or Kestra AS are not affiliated with Brotman Financial or any other entity discussed.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I want to tell you about my podcast called Can I Offer You Some Feedback? I'm a business consultant and executive coach with over 20 years experience in change management, leadership development, and naturally providing feedback to high performers. My podcast is for those of you who have a complicated relationship with feedback, whether giving, receiving, avoiding, or seeking. Feedback is essential for our development. In each episode, you'll hear from real people across industries with their ideas, perspectives, and best practices on feedback. I'll also be sharing business bites with you, simple explanations of organizational tools, management techniques, and leadership philosophies that will help you and your businesses thrive. You can listen to Can I Offer You Some Feedback on your favorite podcast app or learn more at evergreenpodcasts.com.